The Wingmakers, a future aspect of the human species. From the desk of Jeremy Sodders, PhD, Director of Special Projects, ACIO. Classified document number 040297-14X-P17AA-23. To all Labyrinth Group members, FYEO. Based on all available research of the ancient Arrow time capsule, Wingmakers seem to represent themselves as a future aspect of the human race from a time approximately 750 years in our future. They represent a version of humanity that has comprehension of the universal systems that govern existence, or at least the laws of time and space. This understanding permits the Wingmakers to travel back in time and interact with humankind at various points in its evolutionary path. I would speculate that Wingmakers have, throughout history, been variously referred to as angels, gods, spirit guides, and in some instances extraterrestrials. They imply that they are adept at subtly interacting with humankind in order to evolve its understanding of the cosmological environment in which life evolves and transforms. After successfully decoding the first of 23 segments of the optical disc left in the 23rd chamber, I will share a small excerpt of their introduction, as it were. Quote, "You may refer to us as Wingmakers. We are most often confused with angels, though we are actually quite human, just a future, perhaps more advanced version. Humans, conditioned as they are, seem unable or unwilling to comprehend the vast diversity of living beings amongst the cosmological planes of existence, and so somewhat as a defense mechanism lump together what are distinctly unique beings. The angelic kingdom is a different species of life when compared to the human or the Wingmakers format of existence. Wingmakers exist outside of time's focus, while their human, extraterrestrial, and angelic counterparts exist within, and to various degrees are bound by the principles of time. Our uniqueness stems from our ability to operate independently of time while remaining human with all the physical and mental characteristics therein." End quote. Wingmakers and their existence appears to be woven into virtually all cultures and civilizations upon Earth, and appear to be commonly represented through mythological and religious stories. Their stated purpose is to be the culture bearers, bringing the seeds of language, art, philosophy, scientific reasoning, and spiritual understanding to the human race throughout time. Apparently, they perform this duty without recognition, preferring to be unknown until the time is ripe to present themselves and their specific mission. I think we have to assume, based on the available data, that Wingmakers operate at the pinnacle of human existence since they are interactive time travelers. Their interaction with humans seems limited to select individuals who, during their dream state, are more accepting of new ideas and insights. These insights often filter into the contactee's waking life in the form of inventions and sudden discoveries. Now, I have to put my comment in here. Of course, when we are dreaming, when we're sleeping, we're more susceptible to whatever thoughts are implanted into our psyche, and this is exactly how the demons work. That's why the Christian Orthodox monastics are awake all night praying to try and stop and diffuse the actions and advances of the evil ones. Now, and that's why, of course, we know that even our Lord Jesus Christ told his disciples that were falling asleep on Gethsemane, "Can't at least one of you be awake with me at least 1 hour?" Because Jesus Christ, even himself, was praying all night. Now, going back to this, in rare instances, I believe Wingmakers will even physically appear, but owing to the time shift from which they come, their bodies would appear to be constructed of light, and their communication, if there was any, is most likely telepathic. According to the records of the ancient Arrow site, it was the Wingmakers who originally seeded life upon Earth and facilitated life's evolutionary leaps and biological transformations. They and we, according to them, originate from the star system's Pleiades. They came as a human genotype and brought with them a library of genetic codes that, through experimentation, produced the human species and, of course, most other forms of life on Earth. Through their time travel technology, they have planted time capsules from their future time, which they hope will provide a sense of connection to our future selves and an understanding of human destiny. They seem to be particularly interested in helping present-day humans build a global culture. One of their more outlandish claims is that they essentially seeded the concept of the internet for the purpose of developing this global culture. And they believe the internet will somehow become the platform upon which their time capsules will be fully launched into the mainstream of the world's citizens. They predict, and I use this word with chilling precision, that by the time their final time capsule is discovered in the year 2023, the internet will be focal point of new global culture, and it will become the gateway to a connection and a connected intergalactic digital nervous system. They refer to this global culture as the sovereign integral, which is difficult to translate into English. However, Dr. Stevens and Whitehall believe it means that the global culture of Earth will be both developed and distributed through the internet, and that this global connectivity will enable Earth to be integrated with other planets in our galaxy through an extension of this network. They use the example of Earth as being a node on a cosmological network, and the sovereign integral is simply the Earth's global culture presented to the galaxy in a way that it can harmonize with other planetary nodes. I know this seems like science fiction, but then I remind each of you that we're talking about a group of advanced humans who have developed interactive time travel technology that has eluded us for over 30 years. The artifacts in the AA time capsule, and indeed the time capsule itself, are clear evidence of this group's advanced technology, and I believe their predictions should be taken as more than more speculation or clairvoyance. Our biggest concerns relative to the time capsule itself have to do with the accuracy of our translations. Their language incorporates visual art, music, poetry, and various hieroglyphs and symbols that collectively communicate their thoughts and ideas. In other words, their language is a multidimensional puzzle, and we are convinced that they are communicating much more than mere words and standard ideas. A recent issue that has arisen concerns project security. Several of our linguistic specialists have become obsessed with decoding the messages in the time capsule and have been asked to leave the project out of concern for their stability. Anything, no matter how subtle, that could compromise the project's security has been dealt with in an expedite manner. However, this heightened sense of security also has its peculiar issues. All of you are aware of the Judas effect, as described by Colonel Richards. When security reaches a certain tempo and pitch, its breach is almost predictable, because of those in the inner circle cannot effectively deal with the pressures. Unfortunately, because of the breach of this project, we have had to bring in personnel with clearances as low as 6x. We're using our memory protocols with good results, and document management systems have never been more secure thanks to the Minuar technology, but nonetheless, we all have to remain extremely vigilant to maintain utmost security befitting a 12x project. In the time I have been the director of special projects, I have never seen a project worthier of our collective vigilance. Enough about my concerns. Let me go into some detail about our findings to date. If our interpretation is accurate, the Wingmakers have placed 6 additional time capsules strategically located on the planet, which will be discovered in a certain sequence, probably by ordinary citizens entirely unaware of what they are stumbling upon. We assume these discoveries, quote unquote, are actually orchestrated by the Wingmakers. At this time, it's impossible to determine whether these locations can be discerned through the existing ancient arrow site. There remain dozens of petroglyphs and hieroglyph symbols yet to be deciphered, any number of which could point the way to the other time capsules. For everything we are able to discern, there appears to be no intended threat by the Wingmakers to national security, social order, or economic stability. However, all we know at this time is that the ancient Arrow site is imbued with wall paintings and various artifacts, most of which have yet to be understood by our technicians and decoders. Our only success to date was the unlocking of the optical disc that appears to be their calling card, quote unquote. At best, we know how they want to be thought of. Culture bearers is the closest definition we have been able to apply to their intentions thus far. Well, if they don't want to change our social order or economic stability or national security, then why are they called culture bearers? Now, Dr. Stevens is quite convinced that the Wingmakers, that was my comment. Dr. Stevens is convinced that the Wingmakers interacted with a prehistoric Native American tribe known as the Anasazi, which were known to inhabit the area of northern New Mexico. Carbon dating placed the points and paints places the paints used on the cavern walls as approximately 840 AD, which coincides with the flowering of the Anasazi culture. It's interesting to note that according to Dr. Stevens, the Anasazi Indians mysteriously disappeared about 200 years later. We cannot say if there is any connection or cause for alarm. Having decoded most of the text contained on the optical disc, we have concluded that if their intentions are hostile, Wingmakers could, at their complete discretion, time travel to any of our military installations and deliver a fatal blow to national security. Their signature technology appears to be time travel, not weapons of mass destruction. As we all know, there is no imagined technology more advanced than interactive time travel. We are trying to ascertain if any of the artifacts could also be a communications or signaling device that would draw the Wingmakers back to our time. The odd thing is, however, that they could be visiting us every day and then rewriting history so we forget their visit. It's a virtual certainty that they are aware of our discovery of the time capsule and may be aware of much more. It's even considered a possibility that they're helping us in the discovery process. There have been several events where a certain insight came upon the research team that seemed inexplicable, but then it is easy to be paranoid when dealing with such an awe-invoking technology as BST. The materials within the time capsule seem to indicate a race of cultured people who are relatively small in number. If our deciphering tablets are as accurate as we believe them to be, Wingmakers are a select tribe or faction of humanity in the middle part of the 28th century who have combined science, philosophy, and art into a unified religion, quote unquote, and language. They are unique among their peers, and it would seem they are the equivalent of a secret society, not unlike the Chakobsa, perhaps even like us, though they're much better artists. I will provide another excerpt from the optical disc, which provides a bit more insight on the mission of the Wingmakers. This particular excerpt was translated from the text of the optical disc and represents one of our first breakthroughs in deciphering their language with alphabetic granularity. Of course, we can't say that with any certainty that the translation is 100% accurate, but we believe it's close. Quote, culture building is the primary focus of the Wingmakers because it is understood to have such a significant bearing of the world of spirit and cosmological transformation. Culture building, by definition, integrates the values of individualism and the values of oneness. It's the goal of life, as it is related to a species, to evolve itself where it can be conscious of its diverse perceptions and expressions and integrate them into a cohesive, all-inclusive culture. Humankind deeply desires such a culture, a global culture that recognizes and appreciates its constituent parts. This is one of the primary reasons that communication technologies have evolved so quickly upon Earth in the 20th century. Through these technologies, a global culture can be more rapidly developed and experienced, and through this global culture, humankind will become increasingly sensitive to the spiritual inclinations of oneness, not only oneness with the human species, but within the whole of life that embraces and envelops the human species. Wingmakers are aware that humankind is intricately connected to all other species and forms of life within the universe of wholeness. This connection is known as the mind of God. It's more than simple interdependency as depicted in a food chain or ecosystem. It's the accumulated knowledge of Prime Creator achieved through absorbing the life experience of all life forms. This all-encompassing knowledge is shared willingly to all life forms, but is only comprehensible to those who have achieved the ability to step out of time. All of life, even the so-called evil and negative aspects, are part of an incalculable complex, but single-minded cosmological organism devoted to the transformation of evolving life forms so that they can comprehend their intimate connection with all of life and their oneness with Prime Creator. This is a fundamental system that overarches all other systems of the multiverse, and it's for this fundamental reason that life exists. I think you will agree that these do not seem like the words of a warring race or hostile force. Indeed, they seem indicative of a philosophical group who has a very specific mission and the technology to see their mission through to completion. There are over 8,100 pages of text embedded within the optical disc, organized in 23 sections to coincide with each chamber of the AA site. Thus far, we have been successful in translating about 440 pages, or about 5%. What we have translated is very encouraging. There are no references to anything that could be construed as hostile or aggressive in nature. To the contrary, its content is similar to what is included in these selected excerpts. It's very philosophical in nature. There are references to new physics of time travel and some interesting exposition about how the individual soul interacts with the multiverse or cosmological order. Much of the poetry, music, and visual art appears benign, but seemed to have a powerful effect on those of the research team who were developing the translation tables. We're still testing our hypothesis in this manner, but our preliminary suspicions are that the Wingmakers use an encoded language that has an effect on the subconscious mind of building holistic sensory perception in the cerebrospinal system, which is to say that two of our best 12x linguistic experts claim to have improved mental acuity, visual perception, intuition, and creative skills as a direct result of working on the project. It's as though the very process of deciphering their language equips the mind with a new form of intelligence that can best be described as holistic and penetrating at the same time, characteristics we have been trying to genetically engineer for over 15 years in the Atom Sun project. While we would like to retain the same experts on the project to expedite the translation, we have made a difficult decision to rotate the linguistics and decoding team every 6 months in an effort to reduce the undesirable side effects of this new form of intelligence, which is zealousness. It seems that as the researchers' new intelligence is activated or somehow generated through the process of decoding the encoded language of the Wingmakers, they become fervent believers in the perspective of the Wingmakers, and they lose their objectivity, and as a consequence become security risks. We have used the MI technology to remedy the situation with the affected personnel, but as we all know, this technology is not perfect, and memory reconstruction has been known to be successful under deep hypnosis. For the time being, we're holding this course of action with extreme caution, and all affected or potentially affected personnel under 14X are under constant invasive surveillance. Their contingencies less favorable to personnel are being discussed and will be used only under specific scenario triggers, which are still in the process of being agreed upon. Bill Ornstein, who most of you know, was the technical lead on the Atom Sun project, has proposed an excellent array of research tests that we hope can pinpoint the causative factors both psychologically and physiologically. I have already signed off on the budget and determined it as a 12X classified project reporting directly to me. Dr. Ornstein is developing the project scope and sequence documentation, and it may be ready for distribution at our next meeting. Now back to the Wingmakers. We believe their time travel technology may be a synthesis of human consciousness and a biocomputer whose neural net is able to adjust dimensional sequences with such precision that they can open and, more amazingly, maintain a window of an indefinite period. One thing all the scientists agree upon is that the ancient Arrow site was not created in a week's time. Dr. Arneson concludes that the site would have taken, even with advanced excavation technology and a crew of 50 workers, a minimum of 3 months to create. The 23 chambers of the AA site are carved using some form of sound resonator technology, but in order to hollow out these chambers without collapsing the canyon wall would have required a slow, careful process. Also, there's no evidence of rock chips left in the area, so it would have required them to bury the excavated rock some distance away, as there are no suitable sites nearby to dispose of that amount of refuse. We believe one of the artifacts left behind in Chamber 6 is an example of their sound resonator technology used to carve rock with sound frequencies. We have been successful thus far in activating its lowest frequencies, but we are quite certain that it is not equivalent to our ELF technology and has limited military applications. However, we will continue the testing to see if we can access its high frequency range, where it's assumed the tool cuts through rock or even metal alloys. None of the artifacts uncovered appeared to our investigation to be a time travel device. However, as said earlier, it is premature to draw closure on the peculiar nature of these artifacts. We're still searching for technologies or combinations of technologies that will permit us to unlock these spectacular enigmatic artifacts. We are relatively certain that these artifacts pose no threat to national security. They have all been thoroughly examined and are benign in weapons-grade material, at least as we know them today. Molecular scans show evidence of trace amounts of human DNA, not on the casing of the artifact, but inside. It's assumed that the artifacts are composed technologies using molecular scaled CPUs, but we've been unable to ascertain how to disassemble any of them without potentially destroying them. Some of our research staff are growing impatient and advocate sacrificing one of the artifacts for the purpose of looking inside in order to assess re-engineering pathways and enable us to better understand the remaining 22 artifacts. But that decision needs to be weighed very carefully. Up until now, we have remained patient. I think, however, that the time is approaching when we need to take additional risk. In total, there are 23 artifacts, one in each of the 23 chambers. We have kept all of this technology within the Labyrinth group. No private industry partners have been exposed to the technologies thus far. However, preliminary discussions are ongoing with Bell's Labs Cogent Group, and in Kunabula documents have been distributed to its Director of Research, Dr. Wunderman. His team is expert in sound resonator technologies and have been used by the ACIO in 3 previous classified projects with big success. Budgets are being developed over the next 30 days, and it's assumed that research would commence shortly thereafter. If BST is hidden in any one of the combinations of these artifacts, it's our top priority to access this technology and learn how to apply it. However, as we all know, the likelihood an advanced race, human or otherwise, would ever disclose its time travel technology is extremely remote. One more excerpt is probably relevant to this briefing memorandum. Again, it's from the same section of the optical disc referred to earlier, but is a more recent translation. Quote, "It is the drama of life as it unfolds in human culture, which reflects inwardly upon the cosmological multiverse. Human culture deeply affects the spirit world, and as Einstein predicted, ripples touch the entire cosmos. It imprints upon the world of spirit a vital energy. An energy of love, passion, involvement, creativity, and perhaps most important, a sense of personal expression and bold individuality. This energy is precisely what balances the energy that drives a species to seek oneness with its creator. The energy of the multiverse is like a giant funnel that delivers a species into the mind of God, the only vessel of Prime Creator who is otherwise unclothed and invisible. This funnel creates an overbearing drive for oneness and reconnection with the mind of God in a developing species. In this drive for oneness, beings can forget their individuality. Their unique life experience could be forsaken for oneness, if not for the experience of the physical, mental, and emotional involvement in building a separate species-based culture. Wingmakers have strategically placed time capsules upon Earth that, when discovered, will facilitate the development of a global culture that represents humankind and Earth, rather than a specific geography, race, or philosophy. In parallel with this goal of culture building is a goal to introduce a new paradigm of existence. So you see here, what they said is a lie. They do want to change society. Okay, they said they didn't want to change society or philosophy or economic statuses. Well, here they say that they do want to change society. Quote, going back to this, quote, in the case of our first time capsule, it will introduce indisputable evidence that a time-shifted civilization visited Earth and left its calling card. It will also, because it is the first one to be discovered in contemporary times, lead to the discovery of additional time capsules placed elsewhere on the planet by the Wingmakers. These time capsules will eventually act as a communication bridge between contemporary humans and their future selves. The Wingmakers will act as a responsible elder brother who returns to help the next two generations of humans build a global culture that prepares the human species to take its next evolutionary leap. This new leap will include the design development of a whole new species based on the human genotype and soul. Okay, they're out to make a whole new human species. As if God didn't create a perfect human species already. Going back to this, the underlying purpose of existence is to expand and diversify life forms in order to enable Prime Creator its fullest expression and perception of life. The human species is but one of a countless number of sentinel life forms that unerringly grow and expand in diversity throughout the cosmos. Okay, well, we know that the Son of God took on the human form, which was perfected, and he sits with that human form on the right side of God. So there is no reason to change the human body type, genotype, in order to enable it to unite with the Prime Creator. It's already united with the Prime Creator. So you can understand, to me, I think this message is diabolical. But going back with it. But it is but an atom in the body of the collective God. Within its consciousness, humankind is limited by its perception of the universe of wholeness, by its over-reliance on the five senses. These senses are powerful forces that focus the human instrument on a separate reality, much like a diver's mask can focus on the diver on the underwater world. The time capsules we have left behind provide technology, art, and philosophy. Indeed, an entire language that will in time develop two additional senses of the human instrument. The genetic composition of the human species was conceived to have 7 senses. You have in recent times begun to refer to the 6th sense, or the sense of intuition. There is a 7th and most powerful sense. It is the sense that is linked to time travel, which is linked to space travel. Quote, however, before these additional senses of human instrument can be fully activated, there must be a global culture representing a unified, fully integrated Earth. Our mission is to develop the species' genetic capabilities to include these 2 new senses while simultaneously ensuring that a global culture is developed that unifies the human species under one leadership, one culture, and one preeminent philosophy. If this sounds like an improbable goal, we can assure you of its success because we live in the time when it is so. And if you need further proof of our mission, simply learn our language and you will have your proofs, end quote. If the AA site is indeed a massively constructed time capsule from our future selves, it's the single most important discovery we've made, which is why this project is being handled by the Labyrinth Group exclusively. Even our interactions with the Cogent Group have been entirely Code Fresnel complaint, and our SOP misinformation procedure are being used to further safeguard the project's anonymity. Complete procedures have been developed on how best to inform other departments of the military and government if deemed necessary, but at this time no one outside of the Labyrinth Group's directorship level and scientific core have knowledge of the nature and implications of this project. The entire project has been given a security envelope consistent with its 12X classification. Contingency plans for misinformation campaigns targeting public, media, government intelligence, and foreign relations, as well as personnel risks, have all been developed and are ready to deploy should scenario triggers require their deployment. All ACIO directors should be fully aware of these contingency plans and the related scenario triggers, because I need complete, absolute support if it becomes necessary to execute a contingency without discussion. 15 has already signed off on delegation authority. A full oral briefing will be presented at the Orion Room, and a complete description provided to a forum, and provide a forum for your requests. And this is by Jay Sothers, Managing Director, Special Projects ACIO, from Skybooks USA. I'm giving you this information because, we have to have discernment. We have to have discernment. God has already given us the means of uniting ourselves in divine union with God, the triune God. We don't have to change the human genome to do that. And this is on Humans Be Free. Please leave your, by Angelic Sounding to right. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.